Hey parents, it's JP again. This is the next installment of our Becoming a Young Man of God series with the junior high guys. And I thought I'd change the scenery and come outside a little bit, so hopefully it's not too windy picking up in the microphone. Anyway, wanted to let you guys know about what we did last night at youth group. We had the guys talking about who God says we are. You know, in the last few weeks we talked about who we think we are, who the world says we are, and who God says we are. And specifically, we were talking about this idea that we have this identity that we've been given in Christ, and we talked about what that means. You know, a new creation, or royalty, or set apart, and how that plays itself out in our lives. Like, how do we actually live like we understand what our identity is? And we talked about specifically the story of the prodigal son and how he had a certain identity. He ignored that identity, and he even rejected it. When he came back to his dad, and he said, "I'm not worth, even being called your son anymore," and he was rejecting that. And then how we see the father, of course, in that story saying, "I'm so thankful that you've come back," and there's this feast that happens, and the fattened calf is killed. And we talked about the different ways that they can either be uncertain of their identity in Christ. They can ignore their identity in Christ and even reject it. And out of those three that we talked about, the one that came up to be the most common was ignoring. And basically what that meant was, at first the guys weren't sure what I was talking about, and I said, well, how many of us, will come to youth group on a Wednesday, we'll hear something about, Jesus, we'll even be motivated by what we hear, and we're like, yeah, I want to live like that. I want to be that kind of student. I want to be that kind of young man. But as soon as you walk into your school, that's pretty much out the door. And almost all of the guys raised their hand as far as that being incredibly difficult. And really, what I loved was the insight of one of the guys. He said, it's so hard to live for Christ. It's like there's something that happens when I walk through the doors of my school where I just get sucked right back into what everybody else is doing or what all the other guys are doing, and I just get quiet when it comes to wanting to shine for Christ. And that's common because that's where they are. And it's difficult. It's incredibly difficult, especially since, I describe it like a river. The river that's flowing, which is their culture, is just going downstream, and that's where everybody just kind of files in and everybody looks like the world. And, what does that look like? Well, it's not really what Christ wants. It's not living for Christ. It's not doing the things that demonstrate that we are Christ followers. It's really just being quiet in our faith and just not wanting to stand out, not wanting to be ridiculed for anything, and just kind of go with the flow. And it's when a student turns around and decides that they're going to walk upstream where, they will get noticed. And then there's this fear of being noticed and being looked at as different. And really in junior high, all the guys are basically saying it's easier. It's way easier just to keep quiet and go with the status quo and, just completely follow downstream with the river. And so we were talking about what would it look like to, instead of ignoring your identity, to actually embrace that identity. And what they came up with was, and this is great because they were saying, well, what that would look like would be to have another guy or some guys to be in community with who are at school, who are holding us accountable to truly living for Christ. And that's what we want to encourage and foster on Wednesday nights. And so I want to try to get them in a situation where they're able to be in community with each other on a Wednesday night, but also start to partner them with, for instance, guys that might go to their school. Now, I realize that not every guy in the youth group has someone that they go to school with, but when at all possible, we're going to try to build those relationships to where they're holding each other accountable at school. Like, hey, let's shine for Christ at our school. Let's get together during the day in the hallway or whatever. Let's have a secret code or whatever, saying hey, we're in this to win. We want to live for Christ, and we want other people to know that. So you're going to see some of the questions that we went through with the story of the prodigal son, and you're going to see those questions over there on the right side. But also, which is really great, is that next week we're going to have Luke Van Fletteren come in. And Luke is a freshman right now at David Lipscomb University. But we're going to have him come in and talk to the guys about what it means to be like a high school student who lives for Christ, but also is seen by other students as legit legitimately following Christ, but also caring about other people, not judging other people, actually attracting people to you because of your love for Christ, because it's the real deal. And when I asked the guys, hey, would you be interested in hearing from Luke and hearing his story about how he navigated high school, all of them were like, yeah, that would be awesome. So next week is going to be great because we'll have Luke coming in and being able to talk to our guys about that. So stay tuned for more information about what next week is going to look like with Luke, because we're really looking forward to having him there. So we'll see you next time.